0311 hours. Arctic Circle Sector B7, Barents Sea. The Arctic night was endless. Black ocean, frozen wind, and the faint hum of machines deep below the ice. At 3:11 hours, a seismic monitor on the Norwegian island of Svalbard registered a low-frequency vibration, short, metallic, and rhythmic. To ordinary sensors, it was background noise. To naval analysts, it was something else entirely, a collision underwater. At that exact moment, Russia's Project 8AI-8 5-break Yasen-class nuclear submarine, Kazan, was operating at 280 meters depth, tracking NATO's sonar traffic in the Barents Sea. It wasn't alone. Unbeknownst to the Russian crew, a NATO underwater surveillance drone, designated AUV-12 Sentinel, had entered the same grid just minutes earlier, 0317 hours, aboard the Kazan. Inside the Russian submarine, red lights glowed across the command deck. Acoustic technicians stared at waterfall displays filled with static, unidentified contact, bearing 042, range 400 meters, possibly unmanned. Captain Ivan Sokolov leaned forward. Confirm classification. The sonar chief hesitated. Metallic hull, no propulsion noise, it's drifting. Moments later, a sharp jolt. The entire submarine shuddered. Coffee spilled, alarms chirped, crewmen steadied themselves against the consoles. "We hit something," muttered the executive officer, but the instruments told a stranger story. No structural breach, minor bow dent, no explosion. 0323 hours, North Atlantic Command Operations Center, Brussels. Across the continent, in a secure room filled with blue light and satellite feeds, a Norwegian operator spoke into a headset. "Control, we've lost telemetry from AUV-12 Sentinel. Last ping. Barents Sea, grid B7. Possible ice interference? Negative. Signal terminated mid-burst. Within minutes, the data appeared on NATO's Arctic Command dashboard. Two red markers overlapped on the map, the last position of Kazan and the final ping from the Sentinel drone. A collision seemed almost impossible, but the numbers didn't lie. 0331 hours. Depth 285 meters. Inside the Kazan. Damage control teams inspected the forward sonar dome. A minor dent, small metal fragments embedded along the casing. Lieutenant Korolev placed one piece on the captain's desk, a sliver of titanium alloy engraved with a Western serial number. Captain Sokolov frowned. "This isn't ours." He ordered all recording systems to stand by and encrypted a short message to Northern Fleet Headquarters, Severomorsk, collision with unknown object, structural integrity intact, request guidance. Back on the command deck, sonar screens began showing faint acoustic returns. Dozens of them, small, slow mechanical NATO hydrophones had woken up. The ocean was listening. 0338 hours. NATO Submarine Command, Northwood, UK. Analysts reviewed the Sentinel's last telemetry burst. Depth 287 meters. Speed 2.4 knots. Bearing 043 degrees northeast. Anomaly. Magnetic disturbance greater than 900 nanotesla. It wasn't an implosion. It was an impact, followed by sudden silence. If true, it meant a NATO drone had physically collided with an armed Russian nuclear submarine inside a contested region that was a diplomatic nightmare waiting to happen. "Contain this internally," said the duty commander. "No press leaks. We'll classify it as hardware malfunction until confirmation." 0345 hours under the ice shelf edge. The Kazan descended another 40 meters, seeking acoustic shadow. Outside, fragments of the shattered drone sank into the dark. What the Russians didn't know, at least not yet, was that the Sentinel drone wasn't completely dead. Its backup power unit reactivated a failsafe beacon, one that transmitted for only 23 seconds before shorting out, enough time for NATO's CSAT-9 reconnaissance satellite to pinpoint its location. 0349 hours. Satellite relay station, Tromsø, Norway. Operators stared at a blurry infrared image, a faint thermal bloom beneath the ice, approximately the size of a submarine's conning tower. "Could be Kazan," one technician whispered. "Or debris," said another. "Command flagged the coordinates for immediate monitoring." If the Russians surfaced, NATO patrol aircraft would be dispatched within the hour. 0353 hours. Inside the Kazan, damage report complete. Captain Sokolov reviewed the sensor logs. Foreign metallic fragment attached to bow sonar shroud. Unknown acoustic beacon, still transmitting faint signal at 11.7 kHz. He ordered the engineering crew to retrieve the fragment for analysis. As they pried it loose, a small electronic module detached, blinking twice before dying. "Tracking device?" asked the XO. "Data recorder," replied Sokolov quietly. "Dump it." But before they could eject it, the device emitted one last ping, captured by a Norwegian hydrophone array 70 miles away. 0441 hours, Norwegian sea surface. Far above, a P-8, a Poseidon patrol aircraft from RAF Lossiemouth, began deploying sonobuoys across the area. Each one transmitted real-time acoustic data back to Brussels. Among the faint echoes, one stood out, steady, rhythmic, mechanical. Someone was down there, and still moving. 0444 hours, inside the Kazan, Captain Sokolov glanced at the sonar screen. A series of distant pings, deliberate, patterned. "They're hunting," the sonar chief said quietly. Sokolov nodded. "Let them. We're already ghosts." The Arctic was silent again, but the silence was deceptive, filled with tension, data, and intent. 0452 hours, NATO command. Log entry, unconfirmed underwater incident involving Russian Yasen-class submarine and NATO autonomous vehicle, no hostile intent detected. Monitoring continues. Officially, nothing had happened. Unofficially, both sides knew an international incident was unfolding in slow motion. 0459 hours. The Kazan drifted under the ice, its damaged hull whispering against frozen layers. On its bow lay the remains of the Sentinel drone, a silent witness to a collision that neither side wanted to acknowledge. Above, NATO aircraft circled. Below, the Russians waited. And in between, one blinking device still pulsed weakly, carrying secrets from both nations. The next hours would determine whether the Arctic stayed cold or caught fire. 0500 hours, beneath the Arctic ice shelf, the Kazan floated in complete darkness. No lights, no noise, just the creaking sound of ice pressing down on the Barents Sea. Captain Ivan Sokolov stood silently in the command deck, eyes fixed on the sonar screen. Outside, fragments of NATO's Sentinel drone drifted like metallic snow. Somewhere above them, Western aircraft were still dropping sonobuoys, searching for the wreckage. But what NATO didn't know was that part of the drone wasn't missing. It was inside the Kazan. 0512 hours. NATO recovery operation begins. In the upper water layers, the British HMS Ambush, an Astute-class attack submarine, arrived at the designated recovery grid under Operation Frost Trace. Her mission was simple on paper: locate, retrieve, and secure any debris before the Russians did. "Deploy ROV," ordered the British commander. The remotely operated vehicle, Argo 3, descended through a narrow gap in the ice, lights piercing the blackness. Within minutes, cameras caught sight of scattered metal plates, cables, and what looked like a destroyed propeller unit, confirming visual on Sentinel wreckage, the operator reported. Then, unexpectedly, another shadow appeared on sonar. Slow, deep, and massive. "Sir, we're not alone down here." 0517 hours. Inside the Kazan, Sokolov's sonar officer whispered, "Contact, bearing 119, depth 270. Acoustic signature matches British Astute-class." Sokolov exhaled slowly. "They're coming for their drone." For a brief moment, he considered surfacing and returning the fragment, a diplomatic act to avoid escalation, but Moscow's last message still echoed in his head. "Do not surface. Do not reveal presence." Instead, he ordered silent propulsion, drifting just beneath the thermocline layer where sonar echoes scatter. The Arctic was now a chessboard of shadows, each side pretending not to see the other, each listening for a move. 0525 hours, ROV recording, NATO command feed. The ROV's camera caught something impossible. A faint glint of movement in the distance, a reflection sliding beneath the debris cloud. Then, static. The feed cut for 5 seconds before returning. "Telemetry interference detected," said the technician. "Possible magnetic field anomaly." But it wasn't magnetic interference. It was the Kazan's hull, drifting silently just beyond the drone's lights. 0528 hours, tension builds. Aboard the HMS Ambush, alarms briefly flickered. Their passive sonar recorded a low-frequency groan, the kind submariners dread most. Two steel bodies moving dangerously close, unseen but within collision distance. "Contact closing. Range 200 meters. Hold course passive only," the commander ordered. He knew any sudden propulsion burst could give away their position to every hydrophone in the Arctic. 0530 hours, the moment of truth. In the Kazan, Captain Sokolov's hand hovered over the ballast control. He had two choices: rise quietly to avoid contact, risking detection, or hold depth and let the current decide fate. He chose neither. Instead, he signaled his sonar chief to transmit a single, coded pulse, not in Morse, not in standard communication frequency, but at 11.7 kHz, the same frequency the Sentinel had transmitted before it died, a message, hidden in plain sight. 0531 hours. On board HMS Ambush, the sonar officer froze. "Sir, the contact just sent a pulse. Same frequency as our lost drone. Replay it." They listened. 3 short bursts, then silence. "What does it mean?" asked the XO. The commander stared at the screen. "It means they found it." He nodded quietly. "We're aborting the recovery." The ROV was reeled back in, its tether curling through black water as the submarine turned west. 0541 hours. Inside the Kazan, the sonar chief smiled faintly. "They're leaving." Sokolov didn't reply. He simply turned to his XO. "Seal the container. Secure all foreign electronics under shielded storage. Prepare for return course." The message had worked. A wordless signal of acknowledgement between adversaries. No aggression, just understanding. In the Arctic, silence was diplomacy. 620 hours. Northern Fleet Command, Severomorsk. Encrypted transmission received. Package recovered. Drone fragments analyzed. Awaiting debrief. Within hours, Russian analysts confirmed what Sokolov suspected. The device contained a partial sonar mapping algorithm and a miniature acoustic recorder. But there was more. Embedded in its memory chip were NATO hydrodynamic test results, proof of ongoing underwater surveillance inside Russia's Arctic patrol zones. To Moscow, it was confirmation of Western intrusion. To Brussels, it was a tragic, accidental collision. To those who knew the truth, it was a secret neither side could ever admit. 7 o'clock hours, NATO Arctic Command briefing. "Recovered only partial debris," reported the British commander via secure line. "Telemetry indicates collision with Russian vessel, no aggression detected." Admiral Moreau nodded grimly. "Then it never happened," she said. Official statement? Mechanical malfunction. Drone lost under ice. End of report. And with that, the file was sealed, classified, Arctic Incident B7, 8:15 hours, Barents Sea surface, breaking dawn. The Arctic sun rose pale and ghostly. Far below, the Kazan began its slow ascent, breaking through thin ice with a muted crack. No radio calls, no beacons. Just a single message transmitted to the Northern Fleet. Mission complete, returning to port. Behind it, the frozen sea slowly closed, erasing every trace of what had happened. 1200 hours, Severomorsk Naval Base. When the Kazan finally docked, engineers inspected the damaged bow. Faint scratches, nothing more. Inside the ship's sealed vault, the drone fragment rested quietly. To most of the crew, it was just debris. To a few in Moscow, it was proof that the invisible war beneath the Arctic had already begun. The Barents Sea looked calm again, stretching endlessly toward the North Pole. But beneath that silence, hundreds of sensors, drones, and submarines listened, waiting. The Arctic had become the newest frontier of invisible warfare, where borders are drawn not by nations, but by sound waves and signal strength. Neither Russia nor NATO fired a single shot that morning, yet both walked away with a lesson written in cold steel. In modern warfare, collisions aren't accidents, they're messages. At 3:17 hours, Russia's Kazan submarine collided with a NATO surveillance drone under Arctic ice. No casualties, no headlines, but what followed revealed a silent war beneath the frozen sea. A war fought through sensors, secrets, and silence.